What was the "Please Stop" school presentation that you witnessed? Part 1. In college, during abnormal psychology, a student did an entire presentation on Obama's bipolar disorder. She kept citing an article from The Onion. I think that's part of what happens when you just tell kids that Wikipedia isn't reliable and then don't really elaborate from there, because they didn't use Wikipedia as a source, therefore it must be reliable. Was in a video and filmmaking class in high school. One group of guys did a parody of those Gatorade commercials where the athlete's sweat is colored like Gatorade, but it was a sweaty guy jerking off. Apparently, there was a Gatorade cum shot, but the teacher just turned that off immediately before it got that far. Reminds me of the fake Skittles, where the newlyweds are banging in a cheap hotel and gives the bride a Skittles facial. LOL. The anti-vaxxer chick that did a presentation on why vaccines cause autism, followed up by someone else's presentation on how vaccines do not cause autism. It was a weird day. I bet the guy who went after her felt pretty confident when he walked up. Presentation on World War II. Student had just discovered all the neat transitions you can use between slides and decided to use a different one each slide. They used the flashing heart transition between a photo slide of a mass grave and a photo slide of Hitler. Oof. This reminded me of something that happened to me in college. I was part of a group project on mass graves and we needed to do a PowerPoint presentation. One guy was in charge of the presentation formatting and visuals. Like 2 days before the presentation, he comes up to us, giddy as heck, and shows us the presentation. He'd put those animated flaming skulls everywhere, on top of the World War II photos, plus wacky transitions like you described. I think we all just stared at him. For 8th grade talent show, 2 girls sang the Mr. Bludel song. Mr. Bludel was a good-looking, recently college-graduated teacher that basically was about how cute they thought he was. Even then, it was incredibly uncomfortable, and I remember looking at the teacher's face and he didn't seem very amused. I remember in high school, one young and cool English teacher had to stop teaching English to seniors because they were so obviously obsessed with him. It was gross and uncomfortable. In my high school current events class, 2 freshman girls got a little lost in their research about ISIS. They somehow connected this terrorist group to the magic bullet theory used in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Me and the few other seniors were holding back laughter the entire presentation. Had to look it up. Apparently, there are some fringe groups actually promoting this as a thing. What the heck, world? What the heck? Once in college, I was in my Spanish class and our desks were in a U shape. I was on the very end of the U. So some guy is giving a presentation. He is standing behind a podium. Gets a boner. I'm on the side and no one is opposite, so I can see it. Dude just kept going on and on and on. I think he was trying to outlast the boner. He ended up getting it down before he had to sit down. Was like a 10-minute presentation that only needed to be like 3 minutes though. I remember the same situation happening during the 6th grade during a lecture, but instead of a student, it was a 50-year-old male teacher. Science went on for a bit longer than usual. I was in 4th grade, and a girl in my class did an oral report on Martin Luther King and how he was a hero for freeing the slaves. To be fair, my 5th grade teacher thought the same thing, a woman with her master's degree. People wonder why my state is one of the lowest ranked in the US, and I tell them that. In high school, a student died in a car accident where she was driving. There was no record that stated she was distracted by her phone or anything, but the school decided to have an assembly shortly after talking about distracted driving and using her as an example, telling the whole school she'd be alive if she was doing what she was supposed to. This is really late to the game, but I experienced something similar. I was in the Air Force, and a guy that got to tech school around the same time as a big group of us was up late studying, not drinking, and his buddy called him for a ride home because Buddy was drunk. Dude got in his car to get him and didn't put on his seatbelt, got in an accident, and died. We then, during his memorial type thing, got a lecture about wearing a seatbelt at all times in a car, and how his wife might not get his life insurance now since he wasn't wearing his. It almost turned into basically blaming him for dying. Most of us were young 20s experiencing our first death or death of a friend. It was really tone deaf and insensitive. Late to this, but grade 12 advanced placement English. We were assigned books, then had to do a presentation on a topic somehow related to it. The book I was assigned was The Stranger by Camus, so I presented on existentialism in literature. One girl was assigned Animal Farm. She started her presentation on kinds of tractors used in farming. She hadn't read the book and assumed it was about actual animal husbandry. It was a very long presentation. The teacher had to actually hide her face. I love that the teacher let it continue. Like, wow, I'm going to see you fail already, but let's see how badly you can embarrass yourself on the way down. Some guy in my class, about 12 to 13 years old, confused heroic and erotic. The teacher asked if he really read an erotic book, and he said yes, as the student watched in disbelief. Took the teacher 30 seconds to catch up the misunderstanding. I used to know a guy who... He realized he needed glasses because he picked a topic from the board, cadavers. Turned out it had actually said Dadaism. Not a presentation, but during our school assemblies, we often had student performers, which were usually musically inclined individuals or theater kids doing a scene or monologue. One kid decided to do a stand-up comedy routine about a girl giving him a blowjob. So awkward, and the principal had to interrupt him. That reminds of drama class, where a girl got a D for a skit she made and she was playing a prostitute. In 1984, when I was in 6th grade, each class did a winter concert. The 8th grade football team sang I'm Dreaming of a Black Christmas in Blackface. Green Bay, Wisconsin, Bayview Middle School. Better than my school, where we had 4 white girls wear blackface to dress up as the Jamaican bobsled team. In 2013, in Ireland. The teachers did nothing, and I still cringe every time I remember it. The one where my school got ripped off by paying a guy who claimed to be on SpongeBob to come talk to us about drugs. He did look kind of like Tom Kenny, I guess. I was also thinking backward about the question. I thought OP meant, when did the school have to tell everyone to quit doing something? For me, it was banning Pokemon cards in 1998, because toddlers were brawling over that first edition Cherries. In history class, we all had to do a presentation about some sort of injustice in the world. One kid chose a prison camp for his topic. All his PowerPoint slides were photos of men being stripped, chained, whipped, sodomized, and forced to give blowjobs. We were 13. Sounds like Abu Ghraib. You are correct. This was a Spanish class in college, and I think the assignment was something like, talk about your best friend or some such. Just kind of a softball assignment so you could practice using the vocabulary. And one classmate's friend was evidently a friend with benefits. Oh, you reminded me of high school French, sophomore year. We had to do show and tell. One girl brought her ultrasound photos and told us all about her bébé. She wasn't showing yet, so it was quite the surprise. Our adorably sheltered teacher was too shocked to figure out how to stop the presentation. Not at school, but when I was in high school, my church youth group went to this church camp. For those uninitiated, Thursday nights are normally the really emotional nights. Well, this camp was different. Thursday night, the guy that started the camp comes on stage and begins giving a bunch of middle school and high school boys and girls the sex talk. All I remember from that night was the quote, "Just because there's a hole there doesn't mean you have to stick something in it." Church kid here. I always thought those sex talks were cringy and rather out of place. I get they're trying to educate kids about safe sex, but I feel it's not their place to do so. I can't imagine talking to random people's kids about sex, like, who volunteers to do that? An anti-bullying campaign. They spent most of the presentation explaining different types and ways to bully and harass people. Bullying increased in school, and everything got 10 times worse now that the students were more educated on the subject. I was once in a group that was being trained to proctor in-person tests in a college testing center, and it included a heavy dose of what to watch for. Same problem. It was basically a seminar in how to cheat better. Both of these examples remind me of reading about Colditz Castle, which was a German POW camp during World War II. They sent prisoners there who had escaped and been recaptured. Their intent was to put all of the bad eggs in one basket so they could be watched more closely. According to the author, who had been a POW there, this backfired big time. Lots of ambitious would-be escapees helping each other, benefiting from collective experience, and so on. He said it was like getting a graduate-level education in escape techniques. Compared to some other stories in here, this is minor, but it was a group project for one of my literature classes. There were 5 people in this group. According to the rubric for this assignment, everyone was supposed to have equal speaking parts. One of the members in this group would just not stop talking. Half of their presentation was just her talking, and she went on about each of her slides for like 5 minutes. The rest of her group members had like 1 or 2 slides each, and she had IIRC 5 or 6. She would also interject into the other group members' parts to add her opinions. The look on my professor's face screamed, "Just shut up already," every time she talked. We had to give 5 to 10-minute group presentations once, and one group had the genius idea of just copying an entire Wikipedia page as their script. Like 30 minutes in, I hear someone laughing behind me, and I look back to see everyone on the row behind me laughing at our teacher, giving the most exaggerated look of boredom I've ever seen every time they start reading another line. In college, someone was doing a presentation on Nelson Mandela and kept referring to Africans as African Americans. Something similar happened in my school, too. The kids were supposed to be presenting on African music, literature, and art, and they started talking about Kendrick Lamar.